Axios Local is bringing smart brevity to a city near you. Local will deliver scoops, offer sharp insights, and curate the best local reporting. Our events, called Smart Take, will help readers better understand the most consequential news unfolding in their own backyards. With Local, we focus on what matters in your community.
Hi, and welcome to today's Smart Take event following the launch of Axios Local, daily early morning newsletters to help readers get smarter faster about their hometowns. I'm Tori Van Oot, a reporter with Axios Twin Cities, coming to you from the very chilly city of Minneapolis. Before we get started, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Facebook, for making these conversations possible. And welcome to our audiences watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Axios.com. You can follow along using the Axios Events hashtag and at Axios on Twitter. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll spotlight minority and Black-owned businesses as we unpack how small businesses have weathered the past year, PPP loan provisions, and the economic recovery in the Twin Cities and the rest of Minnesota. Now I'd like to welcome our first guest, Minnesota's U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, here to talk about economic recovery efforts. Welcome. I know it's a really slow week in Washington, so we appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thanks so much, Tori, and congratulations to you and Axios. We're excited that you'll be reporting on our state, and also I know it's a little cold there, but you're used to it. So,
yes, it's been a frigid week, which you know these temperatures all too well. On the topic of the day, we're a year into this pandemic. It's been 11 months since Minnesota first issued its shutdown orders, but it still looks like we've got quite a ways to go until we're back to business as usual. I'm wondering, what are you hearing at this juncture from constituents and business owners here in the Twin Cities about what they need right now? And what are you telling those struggling about what they can expect from Washington, especially when it comes to this latest stimulus package?
Well, I spent a lot of time talking to our constituents, and I am really, first of all, in awe of their resilience and how every single day ordinary people do extraordinary things. And of course, it's the healthcare workers. It's the neighbor helping the grandma down the street. But it's more than that. It's the mom and dad balancing their toddler on their knees and their laptops on their desks. It's teaching your first grader how to use a mute button to learn to read at school. It's really been, everyone has had to step back and do all they can to help out here. And our businesses have kept going in Minnesota, so many of them, but sadly, we've also lost in our country hundreds of thousands of small businesses. I think it's a real concern. And we've also had a number of people laid off in Minnesota, people that never thought they'd lose their jobs. So what they're saying to me is, we want to get back to normal again. We want to be able to reopen if we're closed, but most of them are partially open. And we're not going to give up. And so my view is the government's got to have their backs at the federal and state level. And so that's why last year we gave, I think in the CARES package and then the one at the end of the year, nearly $1 trillion in the PPP program, which of course had some problems at the beginning. And we added some flexibility to it as it went on. And now we are looking at another package with President Biden that I think is really important. And to me, the solution is vaccine. Get the vaccine out there, ramp up the production and distribution. That's what's going to help the businesses most. And then secondly, while they're still struggling with a targeted aid, help those that need it so that they can immediately launch open again when the time comes.
And you've backed, I know in the past, the $15 minimum wage, which is in the mix in these latest stimulus talks. Do you see a path for getting that increase in now through the Senate this month?
I do. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have not increased the minimum wage for over a decade. It was at the very beginning in the Senate when we did that. You've had a lot of these minimum wage increases pass in jurisdictions across the country and not just in blue states. And I think the time has come. And so that's something that obviously is a priority for President Biden, and it's been in a number of the packages he's proposed. And with reconciliation, which is this arcane procedure that we're using to pass this, that you need just 51 votes to do it. We're in a place where we can get it done.
You mentioned before some of the changes to the Paycheck Protection Program. Of course, in the first round, there were some disparities in how the money was doled out. Some cases, Black and minority-owned businesses getting fewer loans or waiting longer, even though they were the hardest hit in many ways by the pandemic. Round two, there was some flexibilities you mentioned, including giving those folks a head start. Do you think those changes are enough, or is more help needed for these businesses?
I think more help needed. You look at the numbers, you look at what happened. I remember one of our smaller banks told me that they were getting pressured from some law firm in another state to give them a loan. This is back in March. There were some things happening at the beginning that they wanted to help. This particular bank wanted to help our minority communities and our minority-owned businesses. And we know who's been hit hard by this pandemic, whether it's because they're essential workers, whether it's because they're laid off, whether it's because of death rates, and where you've seen these higher mortality rates with the minority communities, or whether it's where the aid has gone. So we need to address that. No one's better off if we have a whole group in our society who's been hurt more by this pandemic than others. And I'd also mention, it's not always made clear, but women actually, 14% of women have been laid off compared to 11% of men. Close, but still. And so I'm actually leading an effort to make sure that we focus on women as well as minorities. So the answer is to make sure that they're at the front of the line when the next PPP money goes out. It's looking at other programs to encourage entrepreneurship. I'm trying to push a venture capital proposal I have, which would invest in not just the Silicon Valley, those places that get a whole lot of money, venture capital, but to go to places like Minneapolis and other places in our country, and then also to make sure the money goes to encouraging women and minority-owned businesses. Tim Scott, the Republican senator from South Carolina, African-American senator, and I have started this entrepreneurship caucus, and a lot of it is focused on really harnessing the power of these communities that would be so helped if we can push business leaders and go to a point where we have a significant capital invested. And so part of this is how we pay out the pandemic money.
Is the venture capital program something you're pushing for as part of the stimulus, or is that a separate
No. Yeah, it's part of this, yes, because the Biden administration has set aside funding to encourage business openings. Because what you're trying to think of now, what's the light at the end of the tunnel? Well, it's clearly vaccine, bringing people back to work. But then there have been a lot of small businesses that have been hurt by this. So that set us back even further with minority-owned businesses. And so how do we get the capital going? And we have had a long time problem with something like 80% of the money is going to 3 areas of the country. And so what incentives can we have to work with private business to invest and match some government seed money with private business in other parts of the country? And Minnesota just recently went up to number 12 in the country. And given that we are the home of, I don't know where we are right now, but we're always in the top 5 for per capita on Fortune 500 companies. But those companies didn't just come out of nowhere. You know, Target started as a dry goods store on Nicollet Avenue. 3M started as a sandpaper company. Medtronic started in a garage. All medical device companies start in garages now, but that's a big thing there. So many of these companies started small, and we need to keep that rejuvenating our capitalism every single year. And part of that's investment, and part of that is enforcing the antitrust laws, which is probably a subject for another day.
Now, yeah, that's a subject we could talk about at great length. We only have 10 minutes today. We think about economic recovery downtown Minneapolis. Of course, the entertainment and tourism industries have been so hard hit. You were the lead sponsor of the Save Our Stages Act, which created a lot of relief for these venues like our own First Avenue. It looks like the SBA is still getting the applications up and running. Do you have any update on when venues might start to see this cash, what you're hoping there?
Yes, very soon. And we feel good about the person who's been put in charge of it. You know, it's a career person. So we had started, of course, during the last administration after we got the $15 billion. These are entities that were the first to close. They'll be the last to open. You can't stand in a mosh pit in the middle of a pandemic. And that includes our beloved First Avenue, but includes venues in small towns all across the country. We had tens of thousands of people on a webinar that they conducted with the Small Business Administration. We're looking at further help in this area, and we knew it would take a while. Right now, I'm not have any red flags about that, but we're continuing to urge the Small Business Administration to get this done. We're also going to be, I hope, helping the restaurants in this next round and looking at more and more targeted relief. You know, the airlines got help. They've been able to stay afront. Now you have to look at some of these other venues so that when we come back, we can come back strong. I'd also mention one example. Chris Montana, who I know you're talking to, is a good friend with Du Nord Spirits. Let's just say I have some of his Frida coffee liqueur on my table in the kitchen. Not that I drank anymore during the pandemic, but anyway. But that is an example. That is an example of just a small business that should be getting the help. One of the few African-American distillers in the country. We should be very proud of him, a business that converted into making hand sanitizer at the beginning of the pandemic. Those are the businesses we should be helping, as opposed to some big, massive company.
And Senator, we're just running short on time here. There's so much dark news out there. We kind of wanted to end on a positive, happy note. What's one fun thing that's happening in your life this week?
Oh, well, my husband is coming to join me for the impeachment hearing. How romantic can you be? And he's coming to Washington, so that's nice. And we were going to go out in Minnesota on Sunday for Valentine's Day. I sent him a link to all the places, and then I had to personally cancel it today because we're probably going to be here for impeachment. But I think it's fun that he's coming here. And so that's my romantic Valentine's week. That's kind of fun. So there you go.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Valentine's Day plans that we can all perhaps seek to emulate. Okay.
Not Senator, really. I don't think so, no.
Yeah. Maybe you can get some takeout. I don't know. Spice it up a little.
That's the plan.
Well, thank you,
yes.
Sir. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you.
And up next, we have a View from the Top segment with Axios' Chief Revenue Officer, Fabrizio Drummond.
Thanks, Tori. I'm Fabrizio Drummond, Axios Chief Revenue Officer, coming to you from our HQ in Arlington, Virginia. I now have the pleasure of hosting a conversation with Judy Tolan, VP and Head of Scaled Solutions, Global Business Marketing at Facebook. Welcome, Judy.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to be here.
Oh, thank you. It's been an incredibly challenging time for Black-owned businesses. What are you hearing from business owners right now?
Yes, I mean, you're right. Look, the pandemic has affected small businesses. And as we highlighted in our State of Small Business report, it showed us that the pandemic has not affected all small businesses equally. We've seen that Black-owned businesses are closing at twice the rate of others since the start of the pandemic. And when they are staying open, their sales are decreasing at a higher rate, by a rate of 30%. And so based off of the research and the feedback we've received from our communities, we know that financial support was the only way to go that will provide more long-standing, sustainable support. And so that's why Facebook launched over the summer a $100 million small business grants program, and then doubled down in August, where we announced our Black-owned business grants program. And these programs are focused on not only providing cash infusion so these businesses can stay alive, they can pivot to online, but also allowing them in the use of advertising credits. Because we know, whether it be Black small businesses, Black creators, nonprofits, right now the pandemic is impacting them in a way where this award money and these advertising credits will be critical to their survival. And to date, we've already awarded over 10,000 Black-owned businesses with these grants in the U.S. And we're launching additional resources and programming as we speak.
I know that you run Blueprint Education in your role at Facebook. What is currently being offered to business owners that can be immediately implemented?
Yeah, so, I'd love to talk to you about two programs today. One is our Facebook Elevate program. It was a program that initially was started in 2018, and we have recently announced a huge expansion of it. It's a community and learning platform, and it's focused on accelerating the growth of Black, Latinx, and Hispanic businesses. In October, we launched a campaign to build awareness titled On the Rise Together, and a website. And we have this bold, audacious goal of training 1 million Black and 1 million Latinx and Hispanic members of the community with digital skills. And we're well on our way to achieving that goal. Facebook Elevate is also focused more than just on digital skills training, but also on online workshops and office hours and mentorship programs called Elevate Circles to help these small businesses not only learn new skills, but to thrive. And look, it's Black History Month. One of the critical things we're doing at Facebook Elevate is this comprehensive slate of inspirational and educational programming. We've themed it Generation Black, or hashtag Gen Black for short. And 1 week we're focused on hashtag Gen Black is skilled. And it's really focused on our next generation of Black professionals and how we can increase Black economic empowerment through employment and entrepreneurship. This is going to be critical for this next generation of Black professionals. So that's Facebook Elevate. I also would love to tell you about our newly announced Coursera program. It is our social media marketing professional certificate program in Facebook. This is really focused on ensuring that we adhere and provide and fill in the gap for that demand for digital skills. It's for job seekers, for those that are reskilling, those that are upskilling, and it's 100 hours of hands-on project-based training applied in social media, but also general marketing tools and soft skills. And the unique thing about this certificate is that it also then provides access for those that complete it to this employment consortium. So not only will they learn new skills, upskill, reskill, but then also they'll have access to employers to potentially start their new career. And this is really something that we are focusing this program on the underserved, often the overlooked. Unfortunately, sometimes that is very much focused in some of our underrepresented communities. And this program should be there to help to provide those important digital skills training.
The pandemic has forced small business to adapt their way of operating to meet the needs of the time. How has Facebook's products supported on this transition?
Yes. So, it's been a focus during the pandemic to make sure that our products are flexing and adapting. And we have been listening and we have been building. One of the things that we recently launched is this business nearby feature. It's there to better support businesses on Facebook, not only during the pandemic now, but well beyond on the other side of this. This tool can help businesses stay open. It allows them to keep in touch with their customers, potentially gain new customers. It makes them easier for businesses to give people more up-to-date information when they're open, what modified hours that they may have. And there's this new opportunity for self-designation. It's all voluntary. But if you're a Black or minority-owned business and you want to self-designate and identify yourself on Facebook, you now have that ability to do that. We also, within our products, have made sure that business owners can create their own personal fundraisers. We all have those local businesses that we love. Many times you just want to have the ability to not only just give them money and help them fundraise to stay open. They can announce temporary service changes as well. Lastly, we've launched Facebook Shops, which makes it easier for businesses to set up their online stores, both on Facebook and on Instagram. And we've announced our Facebook Business Suite, which is a simplified interface to help businesses save time, stay up to date as they manage their profiles and their pages across our apps. And so we've just been focusing on enriching the experience for businesses on our platforms and moving at the speed of change that's necessary during these times.
Excellent. Judy, thank you for such an insightful conversation.
It has been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, Facebook, for making this conversation possible. We will now transition to Axios Twin Cities reporter, Nick Halter.
Thank you, Fabricio. I'm Nick Halter, Twin Cities reporter. Our final guest is the CEO and owner of Dunn Craft Spirits in South Minneapolis, Chris Montana. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nick.
Good afternoon. For those who don't know, Dunn Distillery and Cocktail Room are just a couple blocks from the 3rd Police Precinct that was burned down in late May. Chris, your distillery was badly damaged in those riots. What has been the process of putting it back together, and how close are you to reopening?
Well, as you say, we were damaged. Part of our distillery was set on fire, but right now we don't actually have any plans to reactivate that space as a distillery. It seemed what we've learned is that it's been much more useful to the community as a food bank, and so that's what we currently operate out of it right now. As far as the rest of the business getting up and running, we're still in production. We've kind of been limping along, but people have turned out to support, so we think we're gonna survive.
You started the Dunn Foundation. How much money have you raised to date now, and what are you going to be using that money for?
We started the Dunn Foundation after George Floyd was murdered, in part because we were receiving a lot of support. We knew we had insurance. We didn't want it to be a windfall for us. And originally we tried to raise $30,000, and we've raised around $1 million now. And what we use that money for, we've used it for food security. We've used it for direct grants to BIPOC-owned businesses who are historically underinsured or uninsured, who were affected during the uprising. And we also are using it for our long-term vision, which is to help us build and administer an incubator space to make it a little bit easier for some of those entrepreneurs of color to get their start.
Between the incubator and this foundation, I mean, it's an impressive things that you're doing here, but obviously it's going to take a lot more than that to rebuild Lake Street, to have these businesses, rebound from, both the pandemic and the damage that was done in late May. What would you like to see, elected officials and the government do to help with that rebuilding effort?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, one, you get what you pay for, and it's going to take money. Part of what we learned when giving out the grants that we gave out, and we were topping out at $15,000 a business, we learned just how much of a drop in the bucket that was for some. If you lost your building, you got $250,000 bill to rebuild it, and your insurance probably isn't going to cover that. I mean, it's going to take a lot of money to rebuild that space. But it's not just about rebuilding it. Rebuilding it to what it was gets us what we got. We need to re-envision it. We need to think about not just Lake Street, but business in general as being more connected to people. I think that's part of why it's important that we support small businesses, and that we do at least some of the work to change who owns some of those small businesses and whether or not they own property. That's the work that we're trying to do to get more BIPOC owners out there into the community and visible in the community, so people can look up and say, you want to know what, that's not some distant business community. Those are our people. And so when that anger flows over, it won't get directed at our business corridors. Instead, it will go perhaps to a more constructive place, which is pushing for political change.
Your hope and vision for Lake Street at some point is that, if you walk up and down that corridor, you're seeing storefronts and businesses that are owned by people of color from the community and property.
Yeah, I think that all of our institutions, government, business, social engagement, should all be reflective of the community. And our business community really isn't. And because kids like me grow up not seeing examples of people in boardrooms and law firms or in distilleries, that's not on our horizon. And I think that needs to change. It's not about making Lake Street all BIPOC owned. That's not the community, but it should be reflective of the community.
You grew up, your childhood was spent in this area. You went to South High School. What's it been like for you personally to kind of see what's happened over the past several months to this area? How does this sit with you?
Really, I'm of two minds. It's been heartbreaking. I mean, I never want to see anything like it again. I used to walk up and down, the streets I used to walk to school on were on fire. And it's hard to describe unless you were there. It felt like being in a war zone. I've never been in a war zone, and I hope never to be, but I think that was what it was like. And so it was heartbreaking. At the same time, and this might seem a little odd, on the business side, we certainly have taken a hit. But in a way, 2020 was the best and the worst year that I've had in my life. The worst because I got to see some really horrible things, but the best in that I also got to see how people react to that. And so many people have come out and put in work to support neighbors that they've never seen before and may never see again. And I hope that we're at an inflection point, that this is a moment that we'll be able to look back on and say, hey, this is where things started to change. And if you think about it in that way, particularly someone growing up in this community and knowing the difficulties that persons of color have had in Minnesota and nationally, if this really is that time, then 2020 may turn out to be the best year that I've ever had. And I hope that it is. And so I hold on to both of those things. I don't think we want to forget the destruction and the devastation, and you can. It's still there. There's piles of rubble all over the place. But at the same time, there could be a lot of good coming from it.
You spent most of the past year not really being able to run a business. I mean, you were making hand sanitizer, in the early months of the pandemic. You're now running a food bank out of what was your distillery. Do you want to get to a point where, DuNord is the happening place again, where people are sitting around your tables, drinking one of your cocktails, buying a bottle of, DuNord at the liquor store? And I guess, what do you need to get to that point again?
Well, I'd love to be there. I absolutely would love to be there. There are more important things. And the way I look at business is DuNord Craft Spirits. We've been around. This is our 8th year. We've only made it this far because our community supported us. And so it's our job. It's my job. It's our staff job. And we all embody that we also have to show up for the community that showed up for us. And right now, I don't think that what the community needs is a place to have a cocktail. I think what the community needs it needs food. And so we're doing the food bank. And I think what the community needs in a long-term vision sense is it needs a way that we can start to address some of the economic injustices that plague our community. And so that's why we're working on the business incubator project. We're going to get back to a place when we're going to have a cocktail room again. I very much want it. It's most of the revenue for my company. And so it's important to me for many different reasons. But we have to do it safely, and we have to do it when the time is right. And we can't do that safely. Our staff don't feel safe amid the pandemic, and it's not our position to put them out in an unsafe situation. And so we're going to wait on that. And while we're waiting, we're going to do some of the other work.
Lake Street has been, people are looking at Lake Street from, TV coverage of it, and they're seeing, what happened there. Are you concerned at all that when some of, these restaurants get back up and running again, when, businesses like yours back up and running again, there's going to be a perception issue about Lake Street? And if so, what's your message to people about, this area?
The perception, that's all about what happens next. We know the past, and we know we can see the scars. The question is, what do we do to heal them? And how Lake Street is perceived will depend on those decisions. It will depend on whether or not we choose a path that says, we're going to sell Lake Street to the highest bidder and throw up as many condos as we can, or if we're going to do it in an intentional way that thinks about the communities that breathe life into Lake Street. When I was a kid, Lake Street was falling apart in the 90s. And the immigrant community came in and revitalized it. It would not be what it is now, but for their input. And so it would be a shame if the new Lake Street didn't involve them and didn't involve other communities who have put so much work in to create, the vibrant community that is and was Lake Street.
Okay, I have one fun question for you. And what is your favorite cocktail?
Oh, that's tough. It usually goes by. I'm a gin guy. Wasn't before I started making it. But my wife insisted, and so now I am. And so, truthfully, usually it's gin on the rocks. If I'm gonna go cocktail, then old fashioned. But it's got to be an old fashioned made the proper way. I don't want a savage piece of orange in the bottom of it. Like a nice, simple old fashioned where I can taste the whiskey.
Whiskey with what else would you put into an old fashioned?
You can go a couple different ways, but generally you're going to have some bitters. I go good whiskeys or rye, Angostura, a little bit of cherry just to give the flavor, but not so much that it turns it red, and some source of orange. So sometimes they use an orange liqueur, or sometimes just use fresh orange. But the thing that should drive the bus in an old fashioned is the whiskey.
Chris, thanks for joining Axios today.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.
And thank you all for joining us this afternoon for a virtual conversation that has made everyone smarter, faster. Thank you to our sponsor, Facebook, for making this event possible. For more info or to sign up for our newsletter, Axios Twin Cities, visit axios.com/local or on the Axios app. Join us tomorrow for another Smart Take event virtual from Charlotte. Following Charlotte, we will be launching 2 other markets this month, Des Moines and Denver. We hope you will join us for all of our launch events. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you on Axios.com.